everybody, and welcome back to Typical City. I'm not going to lie, I'm dreading this one. I am absolutely petrified of this fixture because it's so hard to gauge. I just don't know which Manchester City are going to turn up, because if you look at the Real Madrid game, the game that we got knocked out of the Champions League, the game that we lost on penalties, I actually walked away from that game looking forward to future Premier League games, thinking how well we played in that game, albeit we lost and we got knocked out. That's obviously a downside to that fixture, but how well we played, the amount of shots that we were able to generate against Real Madrid. To counter that, we then knock Chelsea out of the FA Cup, a game that we win, and I lost quite a bit of confidence because of the fatigue that was clearly there for everyone to see. The overall quality wasn't anywhere near our usual standards, but I do think the fatigue was a big factor as to what went wrong against Chelsea. Although we won the game, the performance was nowhere near our usual standards, and it took a bit of luck, to be honest. Nicholas Jackson couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo, and I mean, woeful from Chelsea, to be honest. You then coincide that the Chelsea just continued their capitulation and just did a disgraceful performance against Arsenal. And the fact that another reason why I'm dreading this game is the who plays first is a real factor in this title race. And I said it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you've already seen Manchester City gain the advantage. The Premier League table was flipped. Well, those three teams were flipped anyway. Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City. We were chilling in third. But then we played first, while Arsenal and Liverpool had to go and play Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, and they both lost because they played after. They saw Manchester City have done the business. Manchester City went top of the Premier League, and the pressure was all too much to handle for Arsenal and Liverpool. Roles reversed this time, and City are now 2 games behind Arsenal, 4 points behind in total, and this is prior to the Liverpool game, of course, so I do not know what the game and the result's going to be tonight, but Liverpool could find themselves further ahead of Manchester City as well, and also be 4 points clear with 2 games in hand. Before we go away to Brighton, a place that is just notoriously difficult for anyone, really. They have been mixed this season, though, in fairness to the Premier League and Brighton and De Zerbi fans. I think they've been mixed. That's the best way to describe them. As of late, not been great, in truth, Brighton. They definitely have been struggling with injuries. They've got quite a fair few of them. Their form has been mixed. The fact that they entered into Europe this year and they struggled, and then they accompany that with the loss of McAllister and Caicedo. The nucleus and the epicenter of their midfield was just upended, uprooted. See you later. Big wad of cash came their way, but it's not so easy to just reinvent the squad year in, year out, and that quality and that calibre of player leaving Brighton isn't easy to then just replace them immediately with up-and-coming players. You've got that Baleba, the Carlos Baleba, the 20-year-old Cameroon midfielder who's done a good job in midfield for them, but is he at Caicedo's level when Caicedo was hitting the heights that he was in a Brighton shirt? I mean, arguably, the Caicedo transfer has been an absolute con job, hasn't it, really? Because the way he's been playing for Chelsea's been poor. But the Brighton outfit is a difficult team to go up against, regardless of what the injuries, regardless of the loss of players from transfer dealings. It's a notoriously difficult team to play because De Zerbi gets his team fired up. The energy levels are always there, and the tactics are always really interesting. And I'll get onto that and just go into a little bit of detail about the third man principle and the hourglass formation that Brighton like to use in their build-up play, things like that. It's really interesting to see how Brighton play, but they haven't won in 4, Brighton. So they're not in the greatest vein of form right now. Manchester City, you're hoping you see more of the Real Madrid performance than the Chelsea performance, because if we do, we play anywhere near that level that we played against Real Madrid, we're winning the game. We're winning the game. You know, we play like we did against Chelsea, there's every chance we're not winning the game and potentially losing the game and be almost out of the title race. That's how close we are now. 1 game in, 1 game out. People can. We're so close to the end of the season now. Definitive results like that can be detrimental to the chances of the season ending with a Premier League title. It's going to be really difficult. Most recently, they drew 1-1 Brighton, and I mean, they had 56% possession against Burnley. Away to Burnley, fair enough, but it took a Muric, former City goalkeeper, Muric own goal, a little bit of luck. De Zerbi came away grateful for the point against Burnley, and it was 56% possession against Burnley, nearly 50-50 almost, against bloody Burnley, who are not a team who want to hold the ball, and Brighton, who should be holding the ball for a much longer periods of time than 56% of the game. And so they aren't in the greatest vein of form at all. They're currently sitting 10th in the Premier League right now, and they're 6 points behind Manchester United. And that goes to highlight how poor they've been, because if you think about United, they've become a laughing stock as of late. Scraping over the line against Coventry, and Anthony being as embarrassing as he was with those actions, choosing to cup his ears to bloody Coventry players. Like, you're the big I am now, are you? Anthony, what an absolute joke you are. But Brighton are 6 points behind Man United, so it's a really interesting game, because that fear factor of Brighton isn't quite the same for me. But then it's the historical fear factor. The fact that City have had really difficult games at the Amex. Recently, last season, we drew 1-1 with that NC, so unbelievable. Goal of the season, it was. But we'd already won the league. So there was the caveat, is like, well, were City playing at their best? Did they have one eye on the Champions League final? I'm pretty sure we did. We played a somewhat weakened team. And it took an absolute worldie from NC, so that one goal of the season to get a point off Manchester City. As of late, actually, City have won 11 out of 13 games versus Brighton, so our record against them is pretty decent. And at the MX, though, they've got a reasonably strong record. They've only lost one, in 15 games, and that was on the 6th of April against Arsenal, and Arsenal spanked them 3-0, and I watched that game, and Brighton rolled over. It's going to be really interesting to see which Brighton turn up, because the last few weeks has been way below the usual Brighton standard. So for me, there's a confidence boost in that. But you can't go into the game residing on the fact that they're not playing well, so we don't have to turn up. We absolutely have to turn up against this Brighton side, because if we don't, they will sniff it out, they'll smell it out, and that the tactics and the quality that they have on offer, Brighton, that they can hurt you in an instant. So it's going to be a really interesting game, a definite banana skin for this Manchester City side. City have been in reasonably good form ourselves, so we're talking about form. City's it feels doom and gloom because we got knocked out by Real Madrid, and the fact that we now have a long uphill task of clawing back that point deficit that Arsenal and likely Liverpool will have achieved. And 2 games in hand, I'd rather have the points on the board, wouldn't you? And that comes back to the whole who plays first advantage. And it's advantage Liverpool and Arsenal, so we've got our work cut out for us. But our home form lately has been absolutely fantastic. And we're unbeaten in 42 games, which is a club record. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. 42 games unbeaten. But only 2 out of the remaining 6 Premier League fixtures are at home. With tomorrow night, Brighton. Then we've got, We've got Fulham away. Next is actually Forest. Then we've got Fulham away, and then it's Spurs away. So those 4 games, none of those grounds are comfortable places to go. We dropped points last season at the City ground. How we all know the voodoo. Eventually, we've got our win and our goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, knocking them out of the FA Cup earlier this season. That was a massive little monkey off the back for City. So maybe we can use that as confidence going into the Spurs game. But then Fulham away. Fulham are playing really good football as well. So it's going to be a really grim end to the season with those 4 away games in particular. Home games you expect Manchester City to win. City have won 17 out of the last 19 midweek games. But the last 2 that we lost, both away at the Amex Arena. So we're playing them tomorrow night. The last 2 times we've lost in 19 games of those midweek games, bloody Brighton. So there's a really hard one to gauge this. This is really, really up in the air. Flip of a coin. That's the word I was looking for. But the Brighton team news, again, highlighting the injuries that they're going through. Long-term, Solly March, Matoma. The fact that Matoma's not playing. I'd have him in the City team, to be honest. He's quality. Matoma is an absolute sensational player. But yeah, Solly March, Matoma and Hinchelwood are long-term absentees. Others have been a bit of a mixed injury, minor doubts, really. James Milner, Adam Webster, Tariq Lamptey. Tariq Lamptey is a quality player. Estepinian, he went off with a knock in the game against Burnley. Igor Julio came on at left-back for him. And Ciso, Evan Ferguson and Billy Gilmore, all doubts for the game as well. So you can see there's a long list of players there that Brighton are missing. City needs to take advantage of this, but we've got one big absentee, and that is Erling Haaland. He is out, confirmed by Pep Guardiola. There were concerns that Foden was going to be out as well, which was a worry. But Pep said he's okay. He did miss training with Erling Haaland, but Haaland is reportedly a muscle injury, which isn't too bad. A definite no-no for this game, but maybe we could see Haaland before the end of the season. I'm hoping so. And that brings me on to the importance of Erling Haaland. And this is the one game that he will have looked at and said, I don't want to miss this game. How often does City go up against a low block? Every single team that rocks up to face Manchester City, it's a low block. Every team. The only time we've really genuinely faced a team that wanted to go toe-to-toe with us was bloody Luton in the FA Cup. Luton, of all teams. The courage and the cojones that those guys showed. Fair enough. But Erling Haaland scored 5. So you're wondering whether De Zerbi's going to use those same tactics, usually the 4-4-2 press. That I'll get onto the tactics board in a minute and show you what Brighton like to do. And without the ball, they do tend to have a 4-4-2 press with man-to-man in operation. But going man-to-man with City, with Erling Haaland, if you're going to go one on man-for-man, he's been double-teamed all season. And in a high, aggressive press from Brighton, that's going to leave space in behind. And we've seen the damage that Erling Haaland can do when you give him that space. He never has that space normally. But this is the one team that he will have looked at and gone, I want to play that game, because I'm going to get goals in that game. I'm going to at least get opportunities to get goals in that game because of the space that they afford behind them. Now, that's up to Julian Alvarez now, who's likely going to be stepping in for Erling Haaland in his absence. But is Julian Alvarez got that speed to beat his defender, whether it's Van Heck or Lewis Dunk, and keep them beaten? Stay beaten. Once he's past you, he's past you. Erling Haaland, once he's past you, you see you later, mate. He's just off in the horizon, disappearing with this blonde, luxurious Viking locks, waving in the wind as he gives you one of them on his bike. See you later, mate. Julian Alvarez, not the quickest player in the world, but he's a fox in the box, just like Haaland is, and we're going to need a bit of ingenuity and a bit of guile from Alvarez in this game, because it's a frustrating fixture to not have Erling Haaland, unfortunately. Stones, who came off at half-time versus Chelsea, he trained midweek. There was rumours that was because of a knock, because it's pretty unfamiliar for Pep Guardiola to make changes at half-time, but I'm looking back at that as a good game management. I think he looked at the John Stones and Nicholas Jackson battle that was going on. John Stones was having his hamstrings opened up nicely by Nicholas Jackson's runs in behind, and good. Nicholas Jackson, woeful finishing, but he was testing our defenders' legs, he was testing our defenders' muscles, and John Stones had to come off at half-time, probably precautionary, a bit of management, game management, minutes management, fitness management from Pep Guardiola, which saw Ruben Diaz come on for the second half, and he did all right against Nicholas Jackson. But yeah, it is a frustrating game to not have Erling Haaland. So in terms of my predicted starting 11, the Brighton team is the team I'm going to start with, starting with Verbruggen in net. And at right back, we're likely to see Veltman, and in the middle, Van Heck and Lewis Dunk, who are probably quite pleased about the idea of not having to look after Erling Haaland, but it's a very different prospect for those two to look after Julian Alvarez. Igor Julio came on at left back for the injured Estepan, but it could have been Valentin Barco. Valentin Barco could play at left back. We could see him, Manchester City target. We were very close to signing this guy. Argentinian, orange hair, looks like a tasty player. He looks really, and not because he has a carrot top. I didn't mean tasty quite literally. I just mean he looks like a good player. Valentin Barco is probably not going to start, but it would be interesting to see if he does. Igor Julio is likely to start. He's a bit of a centre-back converted to a left-back at times, but in front of them, we're going to see Pascal Gross in defensive midfield alongside, where is he? Carlos Baleba, and in front of them, probably Jakub Moder, who's been playing a fair few minutes lately and doing all right. Danny Welbeck's been employed in front of him as the centre forward, and João Pedro is sort of a left winger that likes to come quite inverted and tuck inside a little bit and get close to Danny Welbeck at times, depending on the circumstances, and Adingra on the right. Now, the way they build up is really, really interesting, because Brighton tend to have their wide players staying absolutely wide. And what they do with the hourglass formation that it's known as, or the hourglass build-up play, is how close Pascal Gross and Baleba play. So this means that Phil Foden or Kevin De Bruyne, whoever's playing in our number 10 role, has a really difficult task of closing down these two, because there's your hourglass formation. And it's weird, isn't it? Because that's what they do, and it works to an extent. Danny Welbeck or Evan Ferguson, whoever it may be, or João Pedro, whoever's up as the out-and-out number 9, he drops deep. and you see those two wingers go play high and wide. Now, this gives a perfect options for the third man principle to come into play. For Brighton, you've got easy triangles to play. Pascal Gross and Carlos Baleba nice and close to each other. They like to employ that tactics because it creates the triangles, and it also creates the options for those diagonal balls. Quick and easy football, and it's very, very effective build-up play. So whoever is in that role of Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, or maybe it's Bernardo Silva, or maybe Kovacic, they've got their work cut out for them, and they've got to be in communication with one another to defend this build-up style from Brighton. But as of Manchester City, I'm going to go with Ederson, it's become a bit of a debate now, isn't it, really? Like 6 months ago, it was like, yeah, Ederson, always Ederson. Ortega in the occasional cup game. Now it's like, well, Ortega, what's he doing wrong? He kept us in the game against Chelsea, you know? Whereas Ederson, he's not done anything wrong either. It's just Ortega's traditional goalkeeping attributes are showing that, like, he's saved us at times, in particular against Chelsea. Quite literally saved us. Ruben Diaz as part of a middle back three, and the word there, the back three, is what's going to be so interesting for Brighton and how they defend this back three. I'm going to go with Kyle Walker as the right-sided centre-back. Josko Gvardiol. Nathan Ake played against Chelsea, played really well. There's no reason to drop Nathan Ake, but I just feel, again, managing those minutes. Josko Gvardiol, who was in great form prior to the Chelsea game. He played really well in both Real Madrid games, of course. Scored 2 goals in 2 matches after the Real Madrid game as well. Manuel Akanji's starting to look like he might need a rest for me. Just the number of minutes this guy's played. John Stones came off at half-time, which is why I think he might be a little bit fresher. So I'm going to go with John Stones in front of the back three. And, of course, Rodri has to play. Has to play. The great news is Phil Foden's fit. So I'm going to go with him centrally. And playing him alongside KDB. I'm going to go with Bernardo Silva on the right. And it's going to be interesting to see what he does, actually, because I think Doku needs to start this game, because I thought he was fantastic. In the last 2 substitute appearances, he was decent. Not so much in his previous game, but against Real Madrid in that second half, when he came on, he was a bloody live wire. You know, he was the heart of our goal came through Doku as well for that equaliser. And I think Doku needs to play in this game. And Alvarez up top. Now, what are Brighton going to do? What are Brighton going to do in terms of their tactics? Because are they going to be brave? Are they going to be bold? Or are they going to completely abandon their philosophy and go for the low block that's likely to yield more results? And it's effective when teams do that against Manchester City. They have a better chance of winning the football match, as far as I'm concerned. Unless you have the standard of quality that can match Manchester City, your Liverpools and your Arsenals potentially. And I was about to say Real Madrid, but they didn't have the quality to match us. They didn't go toe to toe with us. They did the low block. Real Madrid doing the low block. So what makes Brighton any better than Real Madrid? You know, if Real Madrid rock up to the Etihad and do a low block, doesn't it make sense for Brighton to do the same thing? I'll be surprised if they don't, to be honest. But I mean, De Zerbi, he's a manager. He knows his ways. Has he got the players to employ these tactics, you know, and integrate them and utilise them to the best of his ability? The players aren't good enough to do some of the jobs that he's tasking them with. But they do like to go man for man. And the problem with going for man is you'll often see the double team on Erling Haaland that we've seen, that therefore wouldn't be a double team if you're going man for man, because that would mean either Lewis Dunk, most likely, would be one-on-one with Erling Haaland. But Erling Haaland isn't playing, of course, so it might be more suited for that. But they do like to do a 4-4-2 press, so I'm going to quickly show you here what City like to do in the build-up. Obviously, they like to spread out those back three. Danny Welbeck will be likely tasked with pressing Ruben Diaz, Adingra and Pedro on the other 2 centre-backs. So now you've got the job of Moda pressing Rodri. Is Pascal Gross going to press John Stones? That's where the debate happens there. And Baleba looking after Kevin De Bruyne most likely. Now is Van Heck going to push and look after Phil Foden out of centre-back role? And Bernardo Silva and Jeremy Doku will be out here actually most likely with a typical man-for-man situation like that. Now, Alvarez has got the freedom, hasn't he? You know, this is the tactics that Brighton play. They go man for man usually. Now, the way City play would be like this. So you're going to leave Lewis Dunk versus Erling Haaland one-on-one with all this space in between the 2 other centre-backs of Igor, Julio and Veltman. He'd gobble it up. He'd love it. This is perfect for Erling Haaland. Alvarez, a little less so. But, you know, Alvarez can make use of space. He's not a poor player, is he, Alvarez? Let's have it right. Let's get it straight. Alvarez is an absolute worldie of a player that can still do damage to this team. But he's going to have to be a little bit cute, you know, because they could go a little less brave. And what teams have done this season is double team on that. And obviously, here's your problem then. As soon as you start double teaming Erling Haaland, that makes someone free. Or Moda drops, or Pascal drops into his defensive midfield. And then we've got the really easy build-up play. And the dominoes start to tumble. The second you lose a man, the dominoes crumble. The whole system just falls on its arse. And Manchester City have a free man somewhere that can be utilised, whether it's in the build-up play or in the final third. It's going to be an amazing game. It really is going to be interesting. My heart says 2-1 Manchester City. My head says 2-2. And I'm really worried about this game. I really am. And I feel like if we come out of this unscathed, by that I mean any sort of win, you know, the standard of win against Chelsea will do me. Play badly but win, I'm not that bothered, because then we can live to fight another day. We can worry about the performances in pre-season for next season. As of right now, this is the business end of the season, so performances are not for paramount. Results are, and we have to win this game. There's no two ways about it, and I'm worried. But I'm going to say 2-1 Manchester City, because I feel like we've always scored. Every time we've played Brighton, by the way, there's another stat there for you. We always score. And the only other team that we've got a 100% scoring record against is Bournemouth, of which another team that we always score against in all the fixtures that we've ever played in the Premier League. A goal has happened for Manchester City. So hopefully we can see something similar to that. Get in the comments below, Blues. Let us know your thoughts and your predictions. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silver.